your host, Kristen, and I'm here to talk to you about what else? Knitting. I will also be talking about all things knitting related and probably not so knitting related sometimes. So if you don't know me already, my name is Kristen Janik. I'm a semi-retired knitting pattern designer, a knitting instructor, and all-around knitting enthusiast. I live in the Maryland suburbs of Washington, D.C. with my husband, two little boys, JJ, who is 8, Ollie, who is 6, one overactive puppy named Thistle, and a grumpy old cat named Dory. When I am not knitting, which occasionally happens, you can find me vegetable gardening, doing yoga, baking, watching Orioles baseball, but it is mostly about the knitting, so let's go ahead and start talking about it. We're on and off the needles in this episode. I have something off the needles. I know, it's a miracle. So I finished my test knit for Jessie Mae Martinson of Jessie Mae Designs for her recently released pattern, the Open Edge Shorts, which you have seen before, and the Open Edge Tee. You may be saying, that doesn't look done. It doesn't have any sleeves. And you're right. This is a whole saga. So the yarn I picked for this project, I would not recommend necessarily for this project. It is a linen yarn. Linen is great for summer. It is 100% linen, so it is very cool and airy. But unlike linens that I have worked with in the past, this one biased a lot. And it did so more in the parts that were knit in the round. And you can actually kind of see it here a little bit, that it is a little bit twisted at the bottom. Once we moved to working flat, it didn't bias quite so much, which is good. And the other thing with this yarn is that you are supposed to machine wash and dry linen because that will soften it up. Now this is already actually a pretty soft linen. It's much softer than probably the other very common linen, which is Euroflax Sport. I have worked with that before. This is much softer than that naturally, but it is still, it's a little crunchy. It's linen, so you want to wash it and dry it in the machine. So when I did my swatch, I swatched with the recommended needles, and I put my swatch in with the regular laundry to wash and dry. And once it came out of the dryer, I had gauge, but my swatch shrunk quite a bit. So I knew that basically I was going to have to knit to a larger gauge and then shrink it to the correct gauge. Because otherwise the solution would have been to work on smaller needles, but then never machine wash it and dry it, and then it would be very crunchy and uncomfortable to wear. So that is what I did. But I had already bought yarn for both projects, and I didn't buy enough. Because if you are going to knit to a larger gauge and then shrink it down, you're going to need more yarn than the pattern calls for. So I didn't have enough yarn for sleeves. And actually you can see up here, I had to use another yarn to seam this last bit. I really used every bit of 4 skeins of this Quince & Company Sparrow. So shrinking in the dryer is, I don't know if that's common with linen or not. Again, I haven't experienced it before, or at least not quite so much. So I don't know. But I didn't, despite the fact that the yarn is very soft, because of the biasing and because of the shrinking and because of all the issues that have been going on with Quince & Company, I don't really want to buy any more yarn. So I'm just going to leave it sleeveless. The only problem with that really is that if I were intentionally going to knit a sleeveless garment, I would not have knit the armholes so big. So the armholes are intended to be big, but not quite this big, because normally you would pick up stitches around the armhole to make the sleeves. This is just kind of a drop shoulder. And they are supposed to be airy and floaty, but they would, you know, pull this armhole in a little bit. So the armholes are a little bit bigger than I would have made them were I intentionally making a sleeveless garment. So you get this really nice detail along the neckline here. Really cute. You have this open eyelet band at the bottom. And again, this is nice and airy and drapey, perfect for summer. I am going to love this as loungewear all summer. The shorts, you remember when I showed you them before, they had not shrunk enough in the dryer because I wanted to pull them out and block them to try to counteract some of that biasing. I did wash and dry them again, and they are still just a teeny bit too big because this waistband is knit double, and then you've got the drawstring inside of it. It takes a lot longer to dry than the rest of the shorts. So the rest of the shorts were dry and the waistband was not. So the waistband didn't really shrink up. So I'm just going to keep washing and drying this stuff with my regular laundry. It is intentionally, at least especially the shirt, is intentionally oversized. So it doesn't matter too much if it shrinks more with each washing. And I think eventually it will reach a limit where it stops shrinking. But again, really nice and comfortable. The only problem with using the linen that has to be machine washed and dried is that you can't really kind of block these, you know, eyelet things open a bit more. Because again, if you take it out to block it, it's not going to shrink and it's not going to soften. So overall, very happy with this set. Like I said, it's going to be perfect loungewear for the summer or maybe a beach cover up. So it's a great pattern. Again, this is the Open Edge Tee and the Open Edge Shorts by Jessie Mae Martinson. She just released this pattern last Friday, so you can get this now for yourself. I believe they are sold separately, as I recall from seeing on Ravelry. I think they're separate patterns. And she has, what's it called? Like kind of pay your own pattern pricing. So she has, you know, a main price point and then 2 lower price points. She also has them, the patterns in her Pay Hip shop, and I will include all of that information and all the links in the show notes. But this is a really cute project. Definitely, if you were looking for something really comfortable for the summer, this is a great way to go. I really would not recommend the yarn just because I think between the biasing and the shrinking, you are ending up with 2 separate kind of unknown quantities. You don't know how much is going to bias, you don't know how much is going to shrink, you don't know, at what point do you need to pull it out of the dryer so you can block it to counteract the biasing but still have it shrink enough. So I just don't recommend this particular yarn. I don't know, again, if other linens are the same. It hasn't been my experience, but I have really, in terms of pure linen, have only worked with the Euroflax Sport. And for my outline tank, I used Shibu Knits Twig, which is mostly linen, but also has a little bit of silk, recycled silk, and then a teensy bit of wool in it. And that may change. I didn't put that in the dryer. I may still, just to try. I didn't put it in the dryer because I wasn't sure what that teensy bit of wool would do. And I didn't notice any biasing. So that actually may be a really cute choice for this as well. But really cute set. And finally, something off the needles, something that I can actually wear now, because in general, I don't knit a lot of warm weather stuff. I find cotton not great, not comfortable to work with. And there actually isn't, a whole lot of great warm weather knits out there, because cotton and linen, they do exist, cotton and linen yarns, but they're not always the best to work with. So in terms of comfort, but it's nice to have something off the needles in May that I can actually wear during the next couple of months, because it is going to start getting hot very soon. So now I just have one more test knit that I'm working on. I cannot really show you guys. It's a super secret. I can just show you kind of the blob of fabric. This is a pullover design that I'm test knitting. It is knit in Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. It has lots of my own hair in it. I'm getting a haircut soon. I think I'm gonna cut all my hair off for this summer. I think I'm gonna go really short. Just because after a year with the pandemic and infrequent haircuts, it's just really hard to keep long hair healthy anyway. And with all of that, I think it's time to maybe cut off a bunch and maybe up to here, and then my hair grows really fast, so if I don't like it, it's no big deal. Anyway, another part of the long hair is that it gets in stuff, so so knitting in Brooklyn Tweed Shelter. This colorway is called Postcard, which is a really kind of pale purpley pink, or pale pinky purple. I can't really say anything else about it, and without blocking this yarn, I'm still not sure how I feel about it for a sweater. I have only knit with Shelter once before, and I remember that the yarn is very delicate. It tears very easily, and so seaming with it is almost impossible. But this is seamless, so we'll see how it goes. That's going to be secret for a while because that's not going to be published until, I don't know, next winter or something like that. But it has to be done next month. So that's a big project I'm working on that I'm really not going to be able to show you guys. Other than that, everything that I already had on the needles is still on the needles with very minor progress made. So I don't know if I've worked on this at all. I think maybe I did. So this is my revamped Going Steady, and I got to the split for the sleeves, and then I've just kind of left it because of working on the two test knits. What else? Oh, here it is. My Ridge View tee, still just working on the back. And this is just kind of easy, mindless knitting to have, but I still have a ways to go. So this is maybe about 5 inches, and it needs to be, I don't know, 15. So with the big test knit off the needles, I should be able to make some more progress on some of these other projects, hopefully. And then my Clio pullover, I did put 4 more rows on this the other day. And I am at the point now where I don't really have to keep checking the pattern. I can mostly do it on my own without having to go back and check the pattern, which means I'm likely to make more progress. The only part occasionally I need a reminder on is this kind of, it's a little hard to see here. It's like a slip stitch, faux ribbing, kind of textured stitch. And working the right side is pretty intuitive. You can see where the stitches are, but looking at it from the wrong side, it's really hard to tell what you're doing where. So again, I did put 4 more rows on this, but that was about it. And that, I think, is all I have for on and off the needles in this episode. Adelante is the segment where I tell you about upcoming patterns that I'm working on, but since I'm semi-retired, really shouldn't be doing this segment too much, but it seems to keep happening anyway. So what I'm actually working on now is getting a pattern ready for re-release. The pattern is called the Déjalo Shawlette, which I published with Knit Picks a few years back, and I'm getting ready to re-release it independently as a individual download, and I am reworking the pattern just a little bit to use any weight yarn. It doesn't take much. It's actually a pretty straightforward pattern, and you're sort of it's more about managing your yarn how you want to. The pattern itself is very straightforward. So I asked some sample knitters to knit some new samples, and here is one of them. This is Knit Picks Stroll Gradient, I want to say, but it looks really more stripy than gradient. This used 1 full skein. So the idea for the pattern is to use 400 yards or more of pretty much any weight yarn. So this is about 400 yards of fingering weight yarn, and this is knit side to side. So start at one point, widen to this center spine here, which you can see is just a little garter stitch there. Decrease to the other side, and then you get these dropped stitches, which you drop along the spine here and let unravel, and it makes these sort of horizontal eyelet rows. So if you're familiar with the Outline Tank by Jessie Mae, which I test knit, and you can look at it a few episodes back. It looks like a thunderstorm is coming. That has drop stitches, and it's really fun to watch those kind of unravel. And so you get the same kind of fun here. You just drop those stitches and let them go. And then when you're done, you just, block it along the top edge and pull sort of this way to get those eyelet bands to open up. So this one, as I said, is in fingering weight yarn. And with all those eyelets, this is very light and airy. And then this one is in a worsted weight yarn. So this is another Knit Picks yarn. This is Knit Picks Chroma Twist Worsted. So it's the same thing. It's about 400 yards. There are just a couple of, get that out of the way. So I think this one was, the Stroll Gradient is a single skein. I think this is a couple, 2 balls of the yarn. And you can see, this one is not blocked yet. I need to block it. So even without that, nice and airy, and you can see how this transitions to the middle and then back out the other side. So you can kind of decide how you want that to work. You can, you would start with, the outside end of one ball of yarn, work toward the middle, then start with the inside end of the other ball, and then work back out again. So you get that kind of gradient effect, mirrored a bit. Or you can, just keep going so that you end up with continuous kind of striping pattern. So this, again, this is worsted weight and it's not blocked yet. But still, with all these eyelets, it's nice and airy. And I really love this. Chroma Twist Worsted is a little bit like, it's a gradient, but when you get up close, it's a little bit like spin cycle yarns. You can get that barber pole effect. So I got these 2 samples. I need to block this one. I need to photograph them. And we have several test knitters who are also working on it. Someone just finished a test with Knit Picks Felice Sheet, which looks really cute and mirrored. And then I am actually working on another sample. I don't know if I'm gonna get this done. I have not gotten very far. This, I may have showed you before, is some yarn I reclaimed from an old whip that I wasn't happy with, and I decided to use it for this. This is a gradient cake of Riften from Jill Draper Make Stuff. So you can see, starting with that kind of dark purpley red, opening up this way. And so you can see when you're knitting it, it just looks like stockinette with some eyelets along one edge. So as you can see, I really haven't made any progress. If I finish it, great. If I don't, doesn't matter. But I thought it would be helpful to also see this in a kind of rustic style yarn. So this yarn is a single ply and is, I think I have the whole ball over here. This part is just the part that I reclaimed from an old project. So here is the rest of the ball. This is huge. This is 600 yards of yarn, and it's just US grown wool. So this is really kind of rustic. I bought it because I like these autumny colors. And I have 600 yards, so I kind of wanted to see how big the shawl would get using 600 yards, because my concept for this, you know, is that if you have 400 yards or more of any weight, you can basically just take all of your yarn, divide it in half, and then once you have finished one half, you do like a transition along that center spine, and then use up the rest of your yarn. So there's really not a lot of, you don't have to worry about stitch counts, you don't have to worry about running out of yarn, as long as you've kind of divided your yarn equally in half. And 400 yards is going to be big enough to make, you know, a normal kind of sized shawlette, and it can be any amount bigger, and I guess it could be smaller, but 400 seems like a good point for most weight yarns to be a decent size. So we'll see. I would like to get this done. The problem with this is then I end up with 3 versions of the shawl, and I really don't need 3 of them. So we'll see. Maybe I will consider doing some kind of auction or something when I release the pattern, which is going to be June 18th. So you can mark your calendars. The other way to stay on top of that is to sign up for my newsletter, and you can find a link for that in the description box down below or in the show notes, and that way you'll know when I release the pattern. So yeah, maybe I'll think about doing like an auction or something and raise some money for something or other. Because yeah, I don't need I don't need 3 of this shawl. I don't really even need 1 of this shawl, to be honest. But I have plenty of shawls, but I do hope I can get this finished. So I do have a kind of upcoming pattern release, even though I'm supposed to be retired. And other than that, I can show you, even though I'm retired, my plan is to still occasionally submit to design submissions to third-party publishers, because I do enjoy, obviously, designing, and they will take care of like the photography and the tech editing and all of that. The only difficulty on my end is working to their deadlines. So it's something I want to do occasionally. And I recently made a swatch for a submission for a sweater design that has worked sideways with this big cable kind of running across the neck. So we'll see if anything comes of that. The deadline was last week, and then the deadline for finishing the whole thing is the very end of June, which isn't much time, so I hope they will be making decisions soon. All right, that is it for Adelante. I apologize for the lighting seeming to change. It looks like a thunderstorm is passing right overhead. So I've got a giant gray cloud right outside the window that's in front of me that's supposed to be giving me light. Unfortunately, I have my little ring light to help, but I apologize if the lighting isn't what you would hope. Anyway, news and events. I do have a couple of things to tell you about. So first is Me Made May. If you're not familiar with that, it's sort of a challenge to wear a lot of your hand makes in May and show them off, mostly on Instagram. For knitters, unfortunately, at least up here in the Northern Hemisphere, May is not really a great time to be wearing a lot of knitwear. Especially if you're sort of in the kind of south to mid-Atlantic part of the country. It is really usually starting to warm up here. I have had some chances to wear some hand knits. And so if you want, to see that, you can hop over to my Instagram, which is @mediaperuana, and look at some of my me-made outfits. They are, at this point, sadly, just usually a hand knit sweater with, a jumpsuit or jeans that I did not make myself, but I'm hoping maybe next year I'll have some sewn garments to add to Me Made May. And I set a goal for Me Made May to make something with my sewing machine. It is now May 15th and I haven't made anything yet. And I'm not intending to make something, super intricate. I was just thinking like a mask, right in time for the mask mandates to expire. But yeah, I haven't even. And I got really cute fabric too to make masks for my kids and my husband, even though, the CDC is saying that masks aren't necessary really for people who are vaccinated. I still feel like it's going to be a good idea, especially in any kind of public setting. So this coming week, we're taking the kids to Day Out with Thomas, and that's something that I'm probably going to want masks for. And of course, my kids are going to wear masks because they're not vaccinated and they're not anywhere near old enough to get vaccinated. We are vaccinated. I got my second jab this past week. So in about a week from when this video goes live, I'll be fully vaccinated. More on that later. Anyway, so I was thinking I would make a mask. I haven't done anything. I haven't even washed the fabric. I got Star Wars fabric, 3 different kinds. Haven't done a darn thing. So I don't know how that's gonna hold up. Sewing machine's right over there. It's just sitting there covered up. We'll see. But Me Made May, you can check out, if you're interested, any of my Me Made outfits, and tons if you search Me Made May or Me Made May 2021, mostly sewing, but some knitting as well. And someone who has really cute, is kind of all in on the Me Made May and doing really cute reels and stuff, is Karina Spencer. Definitely check her out if you're on Instagram. So 1, Me Made May. 2, for newer knitters, maybe not you who are watching, but if maybe some of your friends and family are newer knitters, I just released a new series of tutorials, Knitting 102. So last year, about this time, maybe a little earlier in 2020, I did Knitting 101, which was 5 tutorials to jumpstart, a new knitting hobby for a lot of people who were at home and looking for a new hobby to keep them busy in what we thought was going to be just a few months of quarantine. So that series covered cast on, knit, purl, bind off, and then how to read a knitting pattern. So I just did Knitting 102, which is to the next step for anybody who started out at Knitting 101 and has mastered those skills now and is ready to move on. And this series covers increasing, decreasing, picking up and knitting stitches, knitting in the round, and then how to buy yarn. Because those of us who are well versed in the knitting universe kind of have a handle on buying yarn, mostly. But for someone who is new to knitting, boy, it must be really overwhelming. So if you know anybody who is a beginner knitter, or if you are a beginner knitter, I will include the link right here. I hope I did that in the right direction, to Knitting 102. Again, that is my next step in the beginner knitter series to jump up to the next level. Once you have mastered knit, purl, cast on, and bind off, then you're ready for Knitting 102. So that is brand new. Check it out, tell your friends. And the last bit of news and events that I am the most excited about is that I have been invited to teach at Vogue Knitting Live's June virtual event. So normally Vogue Knitting Live has events throughout the year, different cities around the country, and of course, because of the pandemic, they have not been able to do those in-person events, so they have been having virtual events every month. In fact, I just took a class at their May virtual event last week, and I have been invited to teach in June. So I'm really excited about this. I am really nervous about it. Try not to think about it too much because I have a month to go. And if I think about it too much, then I'm just gonna build it up and make it make the nerves worse than they are. But I've been invited to teach 2 classes, one on swatching, my favorite, and the other one, Sweater Jumpstart, which is a class for people who are ready to try to knit their first sweater. So I, of course, will include all of the links to everything down in the description box below and in the show notes. Registration opens on Wednesday, May 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, May 19th. It opens on Wednesday of the week that this video drops. So I hope you will check that out. Again, those 2 classes are kind of geared toward newer knitters. Swatch is for everybody. It's like Swatch Master and about building your good foundations for your knitting project. So that's really an all skill levels course, but Sweater Jumpstart is really for people who have not knit a sweater before and need maybe a little bit of guidance to get them ready to go. But please share and tell your friends. I know for the virtual events, they're offering them so often. You know, they're not being quite as selective about their teachers. But I'm hoping, you know, if I do a good job and I get some people in my classes, then maybe when they return to in-person events, I might be able to teach at some of those, which would give me, you know, a chance to teach, obviously, but to get out and see other knitters and get a little break from the family and things like that. So teaching at Vogue Knitting Live next month, very excited about that. All right, so just a little bit of Chatterbox this month because, you know, we're going on well over a year of pandemic and I haven't been doing much. But as I said in the previous segment, I did get my 2nd shot of the Moderna vaccine, so I am on my way to being fully vaccinated and will be fully vaccinated by the end of May. By May 23rd, I think, might be the day. So I did that this past week. I had minimal side effects, so my arm really hurt for the first day. Now it's, you know, if I press on it still hurts a little bit, but otherwise it's fine. The following day I had kind of some minor achiness. I was tired, so I just kind of took it easy that day, and that was it, thankfully. I know some people have had a really bad time with the 2nd shot, so I am thankful that it didn't knock me out too much. I had heard from several people to make sure you drink lots of water, which is always a good idea, but apparently it seemed to help people who or either avoid side effects or who had side effects to ease them up. So I did make sure to drink lots of water on the day I got my shot and the day after. I don't know if that helped or not, but it certainly couldn't hurt. So, and I'm so thankful to have that done. Obviously my kids cannot be vaccinated. They are much too young. Maybe by the end of 2021, they might have the vaccine okayed for kids. We'll see. So we will still obviously be taking some precautions, but loosening things up a little bit. As I said, a lot of the mask the CDC has said that fully vaccinated people don't need to wear masks in most settings, and Maryland is eliminating its mask mandate, I think, starting today. But eliminating a mandate means you don't have to. It doesn't mean you shouldn't. So I still plan to mask up anytime I'm, in a, I don't know what counts as a crowded setting anymore. I don't go to any really crowded settings, but any place where there are multiple people outside of my family, I'm still planning to mask up to be safe, also to set an example for my kids. But I am very excited that my husband and I are planning our first real date night in over a year. So the weekend after we are vaccinated, we are planning to go out to dinner in DC, just actually get away from the house. I don't know if my husband has made reservations yet. Knowing him, he has not. But we did pick out a place called Sushiria, which is like a sushi ceviche place. And if you're not familiar with Peru, it actually has a large Japanese population, so they have really good sushi in Peru, and obviously ceviche also, because Lima is right on the coast. They have lots of fresh seafood, so this, I guess, is sort of in that vein. Really haven't had any good Peruvian food recently because of the pandemic and everything being closed and places only, being able to do carry out. A lot of the Peruvian places that are around us have really cut back their menu, and they're only kind of serving the basic stuff like Peruvian chicken. And I don't eat chicken. I'm pescatarian, so love the ceviche and all that, but I can't eat a lot of the other stuff, almost asado and things like that. Those sort of more basic Peruvian cuisine. So we really haven't had good Peruvian food in a while. We're really looking forward to going out, having a date. Obviously, we will be masked and requesting a table outdoors and all of those things. But I'm really looking forward to actually doing something. And then my mother-in-law is coming to visit. Her youngest son is graduating from business school with his MBA up in Boston, and she wanted to come and be there for that. I personally would still not be comfortable, I don't think, at this point with airplane travel, but that is her choice. She is fully vaccinated, as is my brother-in-law and his wife, and we all will be, except for the kids. So it feels a little early, it feels a little rushed, but I know my kids are so excited to see their grandmother, and some normalcy. She usually visits twice a year, I would say, and so we have not seen her. She was here last, was it March, and flew out literally before the day that Chile stopped allowing international flights in. She was here and things were starting to close down, and she rescheduled and left early and got home. And then the next day they stopped accepting international flights. So it's been well over a year, really by the skin of her teeth last time. And so she didn't get, a very long visit last time. So she'll be here for a week. I think she's going to my brother-in-law's graduation first and then coming down here. And I think he and his wife are going to come down here as well at the same time, because they are going to be moving to DC in the summer for his job. So they want to, kind of check out some places. I know that this is not the situation in a lot of places. A lot of people are, have little to no access to the vaccine. And so I'm very thankful to be in a country where I've been able to get the vaccine, and very frustrated by so many people refusing to get the vaccine for ridiculous reasons, especially with so many people outside of the US and outside of many parts of Europe, largely unable to get the vaccine. So I will encourage you to do your part, get the vaccine when you are able, continue to take precautions, and hopefully by the end of this year things in many places can start getting back more to normal. So that's about all that has been going on around here. And I'm going to stop the Chatterbox segment now because I have really lost the light. It was a sunny day and now it looks like it's going to rain any minute. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 40 of the Hilo Stitch podcast. You can find links to everything that I talked about in the show notes at mediaperuana.com/Hilo-and-Stitch. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons who help keep this podcast and the whole Media Peruana Knits YouTube channel up and running. If you are interested in supporting the podcast and the YouTube channel and getting some perks and freebies and sneak peeks and things, you can find more information at patreon.com/mediaperuana. Here on YouTube, it would really help me out if you would leave a comment, subscribe, tick that little bell icon so it'll tell you when new content is available. All of this is really going to help expand the reach of the channel, and I would greatly appreciate it. If you're looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you next time. So I learned a lesson this year. Check before you start digging up garden bed to turn over the soil. You might find some of these. We found 3.
Go.
It is described as being spicy, dry, tasting a little bit like truffle and berries together, which means it has a very...
He goes first because he's the youngest player.
Okay.
I am.
JJ, sit down.
10. Go all the way to the other side of the bowl of the space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
You went to visit the penguin.
No, he's not in jail.